The Segesser Hide paintings consist of two separate paintings executed on animal hides. Both Segesser I and Segesser II depict battle scenes that occurred in the early 18th century. Segesser I consists of three hides sewed together and represents an encounter between rival tribesmen. Segesser II also consists of three animal hides sewed together, and the depicted battle can be pinpointed to the 1720 skirmish between the New Mexico Villa Sur expedition and the French and their allies near present-day Columbus, Nebraska.
What's important about the paintings is their history. The museums in the Southwest and the Smithsonian do collect hide paintings from northern Mexico, or the Spanish borderlands, as they like to call it. These two are two of the bigger hide paintings, and so in the genre of art, they're important that way, but to me it's the history of them. They were painted sometime between 1720 and 1727. And we know the beginning date because Segesser II depicts a battle that took place on August 13th, 1720. And the detail in that battle is so good.
The name of the project is Multispectral Imaging and Analysis of the Segesser Hide Paintings. The reason for this project is several-fold. The hide paintings are historical and state treasures. We need to answer many questions which have been developed over several decades by historians and conservators and other academic disciplines. And we need a way to do that that does not harm the hide paintings. Some of the information that we need is also how to best preserve the hide paintings. They're a quarter of a millennia old now, and we want them to last at the very least the same amount of years. And in order to do that, we have to get information.
Segesser I represents an encounter between rival tribesmen, the attacking side possibly accompanied by a Spanish leader. Scholars agree that the painting's features, including hills, cliffs, deciduous trees, bison, deer, and pumas, indicate that this encounter took place over varied terrain. Some scholars suggest the Segesser I portrays one or more Spanish officers with Indian allies. Possibly among them are the Manso, Zapata, Tlaxcalan, Tarascan, Pima, and a faction of the Suma, who are attacking rival Sumas or Apaches in the El Paso, Texas region.
The multispectral imaging process is amongst the best ways to answer a lot of the existing questions and do so in a way which does not harm the paintings themselves. And one very, very special attribute which is only found with the multispectral imaging is the ability to create a status report on the current condition, the physical condition of the hide paintings in a scientific manner. And then we can tell in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years when we do a quick examination again as to whether there has been any deterioration. And this is really important.
Other scholars countered that those who painted Segesser I were unfamiliar with the subject matter, from the encounter to the cultures involved, and so substituted familiar individuals, animals, and terrain in a painting that actually portrays Pueblo Indian auxiliaries attacking plain Apache Indians. Such fighting took place in any one of a half a dozen expeditions launched between 1693 and 1719 from the palace to the eastern plains to discourage raids by tribal factions. Because the encounter has not been pinpointed, it is not known if the individuals behind the wooden palisade are members of the defending tribe or captive slaves taken from other tribes. The attackers on horseback are equipped with Spanish weapons, clothing, and leather armor to distinguish them from the opposition.
What are some of the other questions that we're trying to answer? Include things like, can we find evidence that allows us to better ground speculation in whether these paintings were created by Native American artists or by Western European trained artists? Also, what was the color palette that they used? What were the colors? What were they comprised of? We also want to know what were the actual tools that were used by the artists. We also want to know how these paintings were created. These are hide paintings. They're not just one hide. There's about 6 hides, I believe, stitched together. but any one individual hide is very large, so it must have come from a very large animal. One of the questions is, okay, it's likely elk or buffalo, but which? And through genetic studies that we're going to do as part of this project, I'm hoping to answer that question.
So throughout the Spanish colonial period, officials at the Palace of the Governors routinely dispatched troops to patrol and explore beyond the colonial boundaries. The Villa Sur expedition headed north from Santa Fe to Taos, turned east, followed a route to the Platte River, moving north into eastern Nebraska. Beyond the junction of the Platte and Loup rivers, they encountered a large Pawnee Indian encampment. Villa Sur initiated a dialogue, but the efforts failed, and sensing a potentially hostile situation, the expedition retreated and camped at the confluence of the Loup and Platte rivers.
They are unique as art too is important, not just for their size, but because they are the only artwork on hide that we know of from the colonial period that depicts something other than religious topics. Now I say that and then there's a hesitation because there's a history here too, because the priest, Juan Dominguez, went on that mission and he was killed in that battle. And the painting depicts him leaving the safety from wherever he was, rushing to the besieged troops who were about to get annihilated, holding a cross with his cassock pulled up over his head, protecting himself, and the Indians shooting at him. So that's a depiction of a priest going to his martyrdom. In a sense, that's a religious thing.
You start with a digital camera, but in this case, extremely high resolution, medium format, just under 9,000 pixels in its widest format. It creates an image of about 120 megabytes. It is a black and white camera, but we use very, very, very special narrow bandpath lights, LED lights, to image in one wavelength of ultraviolet, in 6 or 7 in the visible range, and in 5 or 6 in the infrared range. And these images then are created in what's called a stack or a cube, and further manipulated with software. We do this in total darkness. And we also have filters that we use, and we use these filters not in the normal stack, but when in a special set of images with ultraviolet and infrared, where we're looking for fluorescence information. We're also going to take something on the order of just under 4,000 separate images, just of the Segesser 1 painting alone. And it's going to come to slightly more than 4 terabytes. They'll be extremely high resolution. The high resolution images will allow researchers to essentially optically drill down to probably something in the order of 100th or 2 of an inch.
The Segesser II painting can be pinpointed to the August 13, 1720 skirmish at the expedition camp. After daybreak, the Pawnee and their Ottawa Indian allies, illustrated throughout the painting by their painted and unclothed bodies and shaved or close-cropped heads, ambushed the Villa Sur party. The painting also includes 37 French soldiers identified by their European-style clothing, conical hats, coats, breeches, cuffs, and leggings, firing long arms at the Spanish military expedition.
When I saw the paintings for the first time in Zurich, Switzerland, look, and there it is. There's the officer's tent, there's a man in officer's coat laying on his back with something under his head, it's kind of faded, and blood coming out of his mouth. There's another officer standing over him, and then right above him is a soldier dead with his arm extended, holding reins to a dead horse. I mean, the detail was just like a snapshot of time.
What we're able to see here is proof that a pouncing technique was used. If you look at this line here, you see that it's a discontinuous line. It's not drawn in with a pencil. Each one of these little spots comes from graphite powder, which was forced through a hole in the pattern that was placed on top of the hide during the pouncing process. So you can see that here, and again here, 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 and even these 2 major lines that define the top of the pattern are there. We are able to see additions and changes and alterations. For some reason, you can see that this is the first drawing and painting, and then for some reason after the fact somebody came in and painted up into this area and was stroking up, not following anything like that but staying within the lines. If you look at the horse, it has two lower jaws. In this, because we're looking through the paint at the original drawing, there was a change made. We are able, through multispectral imaging and the process called spectral curve making, we're able to identify the colors and other materials used in the painting. We are most likely looking here at colors which are very much closer to what they were in the very first flush of youth of this mural. And you can see there's quite a line. The colors up here are uniformly much more faded and less vivid than these colors here. The very fact that we can look through and see the underdrawing, identify the pigments, we're also able to tell when the artist or group of artists made changes. They changed their mind when they were still creating the mural. They moved figures, they created and then lopped off parts of them and added others over top. We're seeing all of this, we're discovering all of this. So I think that really means that this technique is a good choice and is working well.
Composed of 43 Royal troops, 3 Spanish civilians, 60 Pueblo Indian auxiliaries, and several other Indian allies, the Segesser expedition was caught off guard, and the pitched battle left many of them for dead in the tall prairie grass. The attack was a major catastrophe for New Mexico, and casualties amounted to a third of the province's best soldiers. The center of the painting portrays French soldiers with Pawnee and Otto supporters surrounding the camp. At the right of the painting, Segesser expedition members who are guarding the animals are shown running to assist their Spanish comrades.
Up in the right corner of that is a picture of, I believe it was Corporal Serna, who charged in 2 or 3 times to drag wounded people out, and himself got wounded, but he survived. Well, he's depicted as St. James. He's on a white charger running over a Frenchman, and he has a spear just like St. James in his hat and everything, so he's St. James. So there is some religious connotations in the painting. The story of the paintings then becomes a history too. I'm a historian, I can write and people aren't going to read anything, but you show them a picture and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off.
So to date, at least 69, including the Segesser Hide paintings, are known to exist. Of those, the Segesser Hide paintings are the largest as well as the only secular paintings depicting a historical narrative.
It's really exciting to be able to look back in time and see the alterations that the artist has done as part of the creation of the object. I mean, this is wonderful. It's really incredibly exciting. Being able to identify colors and other materials through the use of spectral curves is also wonderful. When we do a digital restoration based on these kinds of color information and show what it would have looked like in its original heyday.
What makes these hides unique, besides being an important document of the early history of the United States, is that the Segesser Hide paintings represent a major discovery in the study of art of North America. They also offer a great deal to scholars of many disciplines. These 2 paintings serve as documents for the study of ethnography, weaponry, clothing, horse gear, social stratification, and European and Native American alliances. So what's next for the Segesser Hides is that we're going to move them out of this fairly small space into a much larger exhibition room where we'll display the hides along with material culture that the viewer can find in each of the hide paintings.